Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the Law of Self-Defense. Sorry, got myself caught off guard a little bit there. Come on in, folks. Make yourselves comfortable, especially all of our new Law of Self-Defense members. We recruited, are blessed to have been gifted with a bunch of brand new Law of Self-Defense Platinum members over the course of the weekend. Welcome, welcome. We're particularly happy to have the new members here enjoying our content for the first time. And we have some exciting news. Well, especially exciting for members about how we're orchestrating our these shows moving forward a little bit differently than we've done in the past. I'll share all of that with you in a moment. But here we are gathered, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about dog attacks and the laws of justification that would apply to justify the use of force against attacking dogs. I am, of course, Attorney Andrew Branca for Law of Self-Defense. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's enormously appreciated. Very, very kind of all of you. So we have this video of a gentleman on the sidewalk with a dog, appears to me to be a pit bull, grabbing at the hem of the guy's shirt. The dog's on a leash. And the leash is being held by presumably the owner, and the owner appears just to be playing with the man who's being attacked by the dog, letting his dog, occasionally the dog's pulled back, and then the leash is slackened so he can go after the gentleman on the sidewalk again. And of course, there's a second man who's videotaping all of this so we can enjoy the video for our pleasure. And the question arises is, what would be the conditions that would have to be met for the man who's being accosted by the dog to use force to defend himself against the dog, against the man holding the leash who's in control of the dog? And further, what degree of force? Only non-deadly force or deadly force? What conditions would have to be met? And you'll be interested to know it's very different legal justifications for using force of any degree against a dog than it is against a person. And we'll step through all of that in some detail over the course of today's show. For those of you, if you're watching on YouTube and you're in the YouTube comments, I see someone asking, is this on the Law of Self-Defense member dashboard? Yes, it is. And I would encourage you to watch it there, or at least if you have questions, to ask them there, because those questions will be free. Just have to go to lawofselfdefense.com, sign in with your username and password, go to, I believe it's called My Dashboard on the upper left of that homepage, and you'll see open up your level of membership. You're probably a platinum member if you signed up over the weekend as part of our special offer. And then you'll see a list that says near the bottom of that live show and chat. That's what you want to click. For all you new platinum members, welcome, welcome, welcome to all of you. Now, before we jump into all of that, I do, of course, want to mention the sponsor of today's content, which is none other than Law of Self-Defense itself, particularly in the form of our recently launched, last year, we launched American Law Courses. These are our series of law school level courses that we're offering to people who'd like a law school level education in the traditional 1L first year law school classes. Things like criminal law, criminal procedure, constitutional law, property, evidence, contracts, criminal justice, and much more. We started last fall with criminal law taught by Steve Gosney. We did evidence and property this spring, and we have an outstanding constitutional law course starting in less than a month now, in about 3 weeks. May 17th starts our constitutional law class for the summer semester. These are taught at a law school level by absolutely expert instructors in their specific areas of expertise. And we're getting nothing but enormously positive feedback from all the students who've been through our criminal law property evidence course that we've done so far. And we expect that to continue. Now, the nice thing about these is they're law school level, but at a fraction of the cost of law school, without the time commitment, 3 years of law school, and most importantly, without the political toxicity that pervades today's law schools. We just teach traditional American law in the traditional American way. So if you're interested in being the best American citizen you can be, because you know the actual law of your nation, not internet law or rumor law, I would encourage you to take a look at AmericanLawCourses.com and do it within the next couple of weeks so you can sign up for this the summer constitutional law class. Being taught by Dr. Linda Deno, as Shane's put in the comments here. So that's AmericanLawCourses.com. The other thing I'd like to mention is our law cards. Well, they're not my law cards. They're being provided by Farmhand Tom, but I'm a participant in these law cards, along with a bunch of other of the law tubers that you all know and love, including here we see Nick Requena, we see Steve Gosney. That picture on the screen is us in Vegas. We've got a whole bunch of cards now available. These are all just me, but there's at least a dozen or 18, I'm not sure how many other law tubers participating in this. Folks, it's just a gag gift, of course, but I think they're pretty funny. There's a whole series that are just Branca Burns, no tie Branca. That's just my stuff. The other guys are funny as well. So if you would be interested in this, I would encourage you to take a look at lawofselfdefense.com/law cards. All right. So what do we have besides that? Oh, I do want to mention something about how we're going to be changing how we deliver content. This won't affect you much if you're a Law of Self-Defense member. It will affect you if you're a non-member who's been enjoying our content on for free on YouTube and Rumble and Twitter. So we typically do content 4 times, meaning these live video streams, 4 to 5 times a week. And we're going to continue that pace of content. But for the past few months, because we've kind of been reorganizing things and launching a bunch of things, we've basically been streaming virtually all the content just open, free for everybody, which isn't really fair to our members who pay for member content. So moving forward, effective this week, of the 5 days of the week, and we do occasionally do a weekend show as well, but of the 5 days of the week, 2 of those days will still be public access content. So it'll stream to our members, it'll stream on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter. That's one of our strategies for growing the Law of Self-Defense community, is showing some of our content to people who are not already members. But that's only 2 days a week. Will there be open access content? And it'll tend to be shorter content, folks. We're going to try to limit those shows to somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes of content, things we can do quickly. Because that's what YouTube prioritizes. I'm told by the most capable and successful live streamers on YouTube, YouTube loves those 15-minute shows. And when I ramble on for an hour and a half, people just skip past that content on YouTube. So 2 days a week, it'll be open access. Also streamed, of course, to our members on the member dashboard. So they'll get all of that. Some of those days, we may do the first 15 minutes open access and then cut off the open access and continue the show just for our members, streaming only to the member dashboard. Another 2 days a week, we're going to do 2 more shows that'll be limited to Law of Self-Defense members, meaning our standard members, and standard membership in Law of Self-Defense is less than $10 a month. You can become a standard Law of Self-Defense member at lawofselfdefense.com/join, right there at the bottom of the screen. So now the standard members are getting all 4 days of that content, as well as the platinum members, of course, who get everything. Platinum membership is our higher level of membership that entitles you, guarantees you to my legal consult if you're ever involved in a use of force event. It's the only way to get my legal consult. We don't do outside consults anymore. The only people who get Law Self-Defense legal consult are our platinum members, people who were platinum members at the time they were involved in whatever the use of force event was. So 2 days a week, open access. Another 2 days a week, Law Self-Defense members only access. And then the 5th day of the week will be only for platinum members. And there we'll do the platinum Q&A. All the platinum members have a special Q&A form they can access on the member dashboard where they can submit questions to me personally, and I personally answer their questions. That's a privilege of being a platinum member. But for most of the questions are generally not deemed private. So we discuss those with the platinum members as a group as well from time to time, and those will be our Friday shows. Those will not be available to standard Law Self-Defense members. Those will only be available to platinum members. So that's the basic structure we're looking to do moving forward. Invariably, there'll be some flexibility there. Often we're responding to use of force events that occurred in the news within the last day, and we like to address those quickly rather than on some arbitrary schedule. But generally moving forward, if you're not a law of self-defense member, you should expect only 2 days of content a week. If you're a standard law of self-defense member, you should expect 4 days of content a week. If you're a platinum member, you get access to everything. And that's the way that works. So if by the way, a benefit of being a standard member is you put your questions in the member chat and we'll answer all your questions relevant to that particular show, whatever topic we're covering, for free. We don't charge law of self-defense members to answer questions that are put in the member chat. The public who's not a member, they have to ask their questions on YouTube or Rumble, and it's a $5 minimum per question. I mean, folks, you only have to ask 2 questions on Rumble or YouTube before you would have been better off being a law of self-defense member for less than $10 a month, less than about 30 cents a day. And you can become a member right now at lawofselfdefense.com/join. Bump yourself from 2 to 4 days of content a week and get all your questions answered for free every show. Makes sense to me. Or you can become a platinum member. Now, we are actually running a special right now. Let's see. On platinum membership. We ran it this weekend, and we were blessed to have a whole bunch of new people become platinum members. Some existing standard members bump up to platinum membership. And I think this is only running, let's see, today and tomorrow, I believe, are the last days for this platinum membership opportunity. Basically what it is we give you, here, let me open up the screen here so I can share that page with you. We call it our hard to convict bundle. Basically what you get is $2,000 worth of our law self-defense educational materials. This is our full day advanced course, our property course, our defending yourself in riots course, our evaluating self-defense insurance programs course, 3 state-specific courses, whatever 3 states you want, multiple copies of our best-selling book, The Law of Self-Defense, in print, digital, audio, and video form of the book. And collectively, that's all $2,000 worth of stuff. We give you a standard law self-defense membership at no cost, and we give you 5 years of platinum coverage for about 82 cents a day over the 5-year period, folks. 82 cents a day for all of that. So and we do have payment options available as well, if that's attractive to you. And then we have a 1-year option for people who, want something more concise than that. But you can learn all about this opportunity. I think it's only for another 48 hours. What do we have? 1 hour, 1 day, 23 hours, it looks like. At lawofselfdefense.com/HTC. In fact, let me create a little banner for that. Oops. Yeah, platinum member bundle. It's 82 cents a day, folks, for 5 years. 5 years of platinum coverage. Platinum coverage meaning you are the only people entitled to my legal consult, my legal services, if you're involved in a use of force event, plus $2,000 more of law self-defense educational materials. 82 cents a day, folks. I think most of us have 82 cents a day, but regardless, I would at least encourage you to take a look at the opportunity. lawofselfdefense.com/HTC now. HTC for hard to convict. lawofselfdefense.com/HTC now. If that's of interest, but it's only for the next couple days. So maybe just today, I forget. It looks like 2 more days. All right, so we have, let me close some of these. We have this video of this dog attack that I'm going to get to in just a moment. Before I do that, let's look at the actual relevant law. I have a little slide deck here. So as I mentioned at the start, we think of self-defense as a physical act, right? So when you're attacked by a person or you are attacked by an animal, in either case, you're physically defending yourself against that attack. You're acting in self-defense. But the phrase self-defense says, yeah, I see someone in the comments saying they got an email that says they missed it. Well, maybe I wasn't supposed to tell you about it. Sorry, it might have been my mistake, but if I told you about it, I just opened up that page. It's still active, so I would take advantage of it. If you're interested, I would take a look at it before it gets shut down by the marketing people. All right. So when we're using the phrase self-defense in a legal sense, we're not talking about a physical act. We're talking about a legal defense to a criminal charge. So you're charged with some crime, and you want to escape or be relieved of legal liability for that crime by raising a legal defense, a legal justification. So what would normally be a crime is not a crime because you have a legal justification. And when you're defending yourself against a person, your legal justification is the legal defense of self-defense. But the legal defense of self-defense only applies when you're defending yourself against a person. It doesn't apply when you're defending yourself against an animal, because what the legal defense of self-defense does is set the conditions for the use of force against another human being. That's specifically what it's for. So you would not raise the legal defense of self-defense against an animal attack or against a criminal charge you've incurred because you defended yourself. You used force against an animal. The legal defense you would raise against a criminal charge because you used force against an animal would still be a justification defense, but there's a lot of justification defenses. There's duress, there's coercion, there's self-defense, and there's one called the doctrine of necessity. It goes by several different names, so I'll share all of those with you. But every state has some version of the doctrine of necessity. And whereas self-defense, defense against a person, consists of the 5 elements of self-defense. Those are innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. And by the way, you can let's see, do I have it as part of this slide deck? You can get this cheat sheet I'm showing you right now. It lists those 5 elements of self-defense. It provides a brief description of each. And we make this available for free. Our 5 elements of self-defense law cheat sheet. You can get this at lawofselfdefense.com/elements, as is shown in this picture here. And if you'd like a more detailed explanation of the 5 elements, I would encourage you to pick up a copy of our book, The Law of Self-Defense Principles, and we'll make this available to you for free. Check it out on Amazon, 5-star rated on Amazon, but don't buy it on Amazon. They'll charge you for the book and the shipping and handling. We only ask you to cover the shipping and handling. We eat the cost of the book. The book you get for free. The cost of shipping you the book we ask you to pay for. But you can get this book for free at lawofselfdefense.com/free book. And it's a couple hundred pages explaining in detail those 5 elements of self-defense, how they apply, as well as a lot of other very, very useful information on the principles of the law of self-defense. And that's at lawofselfdefense.com/free book. So when you're defending yourself against a person and you're using force, the test that's applied is, are these 5 elements present for your claim of self-defense? Up to 5 elements. The good news is there's not 500 of these. There's not 50 of these. There's only 5, only up to 5. Often not all 5 are required. But when the prosecutor gets that investigative report about your use of force, what he's looking for is any one of the required elements to be vulnerable to attack, to be vulnerable to being disproven beyond a reasonable doubt. Because if he can do that, your claim of self-defense isn't just diminished, it's obliterated. If any one of the required elements can be disproven beyond a reasonable doubt, you have no claim of self-defense, which is a problem, of course, because when you claim self-defense, you're not saying it wasn't me, I didn't do it. You're saying the opposite of that. You're saying it was me, I did it, I shot that guy. But I did it with the legal defense of self-defense, the legal justification of self-defense. So that's why self-defense is called a defense of confession and avoidance. You're confessing to the underlying conduct, but you're seeking to avoid criminal liability based on the justification of self-defense. Well, if your claim of self-defense gets obliterated, what's left of the sentence, I shot him in self-defense? Well, if you take away the in self-defense, all that's left is I shot him. That's a confession. That's an easy conviction. You think the prosecutor knows if he can disprove any one of these elements, take self-defense off the table, that he's got an easy conviction? Sure he does. But those are the elements we have to consider when you're using force against another person. Were you the innocent victim of an imminent, unlawful, let's say deadly force attack, and were your perceptions, your decisions, your actions in self-defense both subjectively and objectively reasonable? That's in sentence form what those elements require. I say in deadly force, the element of proportionality distinguishes between non-deadly force and deadly force when you're using force against a human and trying to justify it as self-defense. So generally, if you're only facing a non-deadly force threat, you can only use non-deadly force in self-defense. You can't use deadly force in self-defense unless you're facing a deadly force threat. That's what the concept of proportionality means in this context. That's if you're charged with a use of force crime for having used force against another human, and you're seeking to justify that use of force, make it a non-crime by raising the legal defense of self-defense. But if you're defending yourself against an animal, these elements are not at all required. None of them apply, really. What's applied instead is something called the doctrine of necessity justification. And it goes by slightly different names in slightly different states, but the general concept is the same. And it's a pure balancing of interest test. So the idea is you did something that was normally a crime, wrongful, but you committed that small wrong to avoid a much larger wrong. You committed a small harm to avoid a much larger harm. And I'm going to pull up just a list of, so here we have a number of states, and I'm not trying to be comprehensive here. I just listed a bunch of states so you could see how widespread this doctrine is. Every state has some version of this. Some of them call it the doctrine of necessity. So here you can see we have Alaska, Arizona, Illinois, New Jersey, Tennessee, Texas, Wisconsin. They all refer to this in their various statutes as necessity, or the necessity defense, or the justification of necessity. Other states use different terms. Some call it the doctrine of choice of evils. Arkansas, Colorado, Delaware, Hawaii, Kentucky, Nebraska, Oregon, other states, you see they're all referring to the choice of evils. That's the same thing as the necessity defense. It's the same kind of balancing test. Some refer to it as the doctrine of competing harms, right? The balancing of the harms. As long as you're responsible for the lesser harm to avoid a greater harm, you're justified in committing what would otherwise have been a wrongful act. And I'm just going to pull up the Illinois version of this, not because it's superior in any way to the others. It's more concise than most of them. Statutes tend to get wordy, so it's most concise, and so I'm just using it as a model of what these statutes typically hold. So Illinois statute 7-13, necessity: conduct which would otherwise be an offense, be a crime, be a wrong, is justifiable by reason of necessity if the accused was without blame in occasioning or developing the situation. So you can't be the person who's responsible for creating the thing you're trying to address. It can't have been your fault. Without blame in occasioning or developing the situation, and reasonably believed such conduct was necessary to avoid a public or private injury greater than the injury which might reasonably result from his own conduct. So you're walking down the sidewalk. It's a hot summer day. It's 90 degrees out. There's cars parked at the curb. You walked by a car and you happen to observe in the back seat is a baby in a baby seat, buckled in. All the doors are locked. The windows are rolled up. It's got to be 120 degrees inside that car in the sun on this hot day. If the baby stays in that car, it will die. So the doors are locked, so you break a window of the car so you can unlock the door, retrieve the baby from the car, save the baby's life. Is it wrong to break the window of the car in an absolute sense? Sure, you're not allowed to break windows in cars. That's not lawful. That's a harm, right? That's an injury to someone's property, criminal mischief. And normally you could be charged with a crime for that. And in this case, if you were charged with a crime for breaking the window, the legal defense you would raise is not self-defense, obviously. It would be the necessity defense. You'd be arguing, in effect, that the harm, the conduct, which would otherwise be an offense, is justifiable by means of necessity if the conduct was necessary to avoid a public or private injury greater than the breaking of the window. And clearly, we're avoiding the death of a human being. That's of greater value than is the breaking of the window or having refrained from breaking the window. Now, importantly, as it says here, it can't have been of necessity if you were to blame. So if you saw the baby in the backseat of the car, but the windows were rolled down and the doors were unlocked, and you rolled up the windows and locked the doors and slammed everything shut, and then broke the window to save the baby, you couldn't justify that breaking in the window as under the necessity doctrine because you created the need to do that. Straightforward enough. I'll mention in passing that in the 60s and 70s, a lot of states added another paragraph to this, and that is that the necessity cannot be purely a moral necessity. And this was added for a couple of reasons. One is there was a lot of destructive protests around nuclear power plants, sometimes military bases, more commonly nuclear power plants. People had been terrified by things like 3 Mile Island. They'd been made neurotic about the purported dangers of nuclear power plants, and they were climbing over fences and stuff when they were protesting and creating, real risks and dangers themselves, and then trying to justify their conduct by saying, well, the necessity doctrine. Sure, I'm committing a crime by trespassing, climbing the fence, destroying property, but I'm doing it to avoid a much greater harm. The China syndrome, the meltdown of the plant to the core of the earth and destruction of the planet. I mean, that's not scientifically reasonable. And so specific language was inserted into many of these necessity doctrine statutes saying you can't be trying to justify actions that you're committing for a purely moral sense where there's not an immediate imminent imperative to act. And this also applied to in the abortion setting where people would say they bomb an abortion clinic and then they get caught and they try to justify it under necessity. Hey, sure, I bombed the building, but that's a smaller harm than all the abortions taking place inside the building. Nope, that doesn't work because you're not acting in the threat of an imminent moment, and it's a moral belief. Illinois doesn't have it in their necessity statute. Perhaps they have it in their case law. Who knows? But I just thought I'd mention that in passing. So this is the doctrine. This balancing test is the doctrine that you would apply, you would raise, the justification you would raise if you were charged with a criminal offense for using force against an animal, using force against a person, self-defense. By the way, the necessity defense would not apply to using force against a person because we have a self-defense body of law that's specifically for that purpose. So justification of self-defense, those 5 elements of self-defense, if you've been charged with a crime for using force against a person, and the necessity justification defense, if you're charged with a crime for having used force against an animal. So that's how that works. Now, with that in mind, let's take a look at the actual video itself. And by the way, folks, as always, if you're a law self-defense member watching this in the chat, please, I don't know if the volume's low. I can't, my soundboard is cranked up loud, folks. So I'm not sure what to tell you about that. Let's take a look at the video of what happened this weekend. Okay. So here it is. So we have a dog on a leash here. You'll not be surprised to observe that it's a pit bull by all appearances. Again, not a Chihuahua attack. And the pit bull's on a leash, so it's under a human being's control. And the human being is deliberately allowing sufficient slack in the leash so that the dog can bite onto this gentleman's clothing here on the hem of his shirt. Apparently, the gentleman does get a finger bit as well in the process of all that. He tells us. And then occasionally the holder of the leash will pull the dog back for a moment and then put slack into the leash so the dog can once again attack the human here. And of course, there's also a second man who's actually doing the filming. So there's arguably, if we presume the man filming and laughing is cooperating with the leash holder, we have a disparity of number situation as well. So let's go ahead and play this video and see what we get.
Get the fuck off, man. Yo, release. Get off, yo. Knock it off, yo. Knock this dog off, yo. Slick, yo. Get off the fucking hood, yo. Get off. No, yo. Get off. Get the dog off, no, bro. Come on. No, let go. Get the fuck off. Get the fuck off. Get slick. Get off, man. No, let go. Fuck, man. Shit all up, right? Fuck off, man. Man, look, the motherfucker bit my finger, bro. Get the fucking dog off of me, man.
All right, there we go. Sorry, folks, I forgot there was so much bad language in the video. So, what are the possible scenarios here? The man being attacked by the dog could use defensive force against, well, he could do nothing really, right? Which is what he did. That's one option. He could use defensive force against the dog, in which case, should he be charged for that, cruelty to animals, something along those lines, he would raise the legal justification of the necessity defense. Or, in theory, he could use force against the dog's owner, in which case he'd need to raise the legal defense of self-defense, those 5 elements of self-defense. So let's consider the dog first. Here we have a pure balancing test. If he uses force against the dog, would that be reasonably deemed to be a lesser harm than whatever harm the dog was doing? Well, you kind of have to first evaluate what harm the dog was doing or imminently capable of doing, right? You're allowed to protect yourself from what's reasonably inferable as about to happen, likely to happen, reasonable prospect of happening. You can't imagine a danger, but if you have reason to believe that a great harm is about to result and you have a factual basis for that, it would be reasonable to defend yourself against that. So what we have here is in the moment, the dog is basically just biting the hem of the guy's shirt, right? So you might argue, what do we have here? We have damage to property. So what could the man do in terms of using force against the dog that would be a lesser harm than the damage to his clothing? I guess he could push the dog away. He could kick the dog, maybe not so hard as to cause a dog serious injury, maybe harder. I mean, it's subjective here, right? Could he kill the dog? Could he shoot the dog? Could he stab the dog because the dog was damaging his jacket? That might be a stretch. A lot of people, and remember, your conduct's being evaluated by other people after the fact, right? So say the gentleman getting his shirt bitten, pulled out a folding off knife and stabbed the dog, caused serious bodily injury, killed the dog. Now he's got to make the argument, and I'm not saying what the conclusion should be, but the legal argument would be, hey, my stabbing, my killing of the dog with the knife is a lesser harm than the dog tearing my shirt. That might be a hard sell, especially if you have any dog owners on the jury. If, of course, we're assuming here that the only danger of the dog, we'll get to greater danger in a moment. We're assuming here the only threat of the dog is to the shirt. In that context, assuming that, stabbing of the dog might be too much in that balancing. Death of dog, tearing of shirt. Because in theory, the tearing of the shirt could be made good by the dog's owner, right? You could sue the dog's owner and say, hey, you got to buy me a new jacket. You're made whole. You stab the dog to death, you can get another dog, but not that dog, right? And pet owners generally have considerable affection for their pets. So it's not like a jacket where there's no sentimental value, presumably. What if he didn't use a knife, but he used a gun and he shot the dog? Well, of course, we have the same problems with the balancing test, shooting the dog dead versus tearing of the jacket. That might be a tough sell, but you have another problem. If you discharge a gun in a crowded residential environment, an environment where there's lots of other people around, you may well find yourself charged with felony reckless endangerment to the general public. Because frankly, it's not that easy to shoot a dog. when you're being attacked. They move around a lot. They're small targets. It's easy for a round to over-penetrate a dog. And then that bullet keeps going until it hits something, right? Bullets never miss, ultimately. They may miss your intended target, but they keep going until they hit something. And now you fired around in a community with, innocent bystanders, men, women, children, and arguably you've endangered all of them. And I see that charge a lot. Felony reckless endangerment for people who fire guns when they're defending themselves against animals. So that's not good because that's a felony conviction. Just going to let the fire trucks go by. Otherwise, absent the risk of a felony reckless endangerment because of the firing and the bullets, if you limited yourself to a knife to defend yourself, it may be practically more effective, frankly, on a dog. But second of all, your holding of a knife is not recklessly endangering other people in the community. So you would take that aggravated charge off the table. Okay, so we've been assuming so far you're defending yourself against a dog, and the only harm the dog's reasonably capable of causing is damage to a piece of clothing. And that's been the balancing test we've done. But is that true? Is it true that the only danger we have to fear from this dog is damage to clothing? Man, it's like an eight alarm fire out there. I hope it's not my building. Nothing but the best production values here at Law Self-Defense, folks. It's not the only risk, especially for some breeds of dog. Some breeds of dog are exceptionally violent, exceptionally dangerous, even to grown people, and especially to smaller people, elderly, women, children. And of course, I'm speaking primarily here of pit bulls. And I know the pit bull owners freak out every time I bring it up. Sorry, folks, it's just true. Other breeds of dogs don't routinely maim, kill people, take limbs off of people, brutally maim them, especially around the face, and kill. So there is a threat from this pit bull of death or serious bodily injury. By the way, what's only a few inches away from the hem of that guy's shirt? Clenched in that dog's jaws, the jaws of a pit bull. Well, his junk. You think if that dog goes for the guy's junk next, it's not going to be serious bodily injury? You volunteer for that experiment? I don't want to volunteer for that experiment. And of course, a dog doesn't have to just go for the junk or the lower body. Dogs can bring people down. People can trip and fall. And then the dog can go for things like a person's face. Now, a good friend of mine is a guy named Sean Sorrentino. I've known Sean maybe a decade now. I think we met when I was covering the Zimmerman trial when that was happening. Really great guy, very smart guy, vet, very capable runner of a pistol for sure. Does very, very well in competitive pistol sports, and just a great all-around guy. By the way, I would encourage you to follow him on Twitter. He's a smart dude. What he's got to say is worth reading, and I think it's just at Sorrentino Sean, I think is his handle. Sorrentino, SORRENTINO Sean, SEAN. Anyway, really nice guy, Sean. But he had an event last year where he was attacked by a pit bull. This is a grown man, physically fit, athletic, veteran, skilled with a gun, guy who thinks about self-defense and makes sure he knows how to run that gun as well as possible. He was attacked by a pit bull, and the consequences for that attack for this guy, grown man, physically fit, were pretty damn severe. And this is all with his permission. Sean, he shared these pictures on Twitter, but he's also given me permission to share them all with you. This is what Sean looked like shortly after that attack. The surgeon, a specialist on facial reconstruction, after the surgery, Sean asked him how many stitches it took to put all this back together. And the surgeon said he just stopped counting. There were that many. $40,000 worth of medical expenses for this attack on Sean. And of course, many people are killed, maimed permanently. Sean looks pretty damn good. But Sean got lucky, and he describes the dog that attacked him as a pit bull that weighed about 45 pounds. And Sean's a dog owner. He loves dogs. So there's no reason for him to lie about this. Does this look like serious bodily injury to you? It does to me, right? And serious bodily injury falls within the scope of deadly force. Deadly force includes not just death, but death or serious bodily injury. So this gentleman on the sidewalk, this is the threat he's being faced with. Not just damage to his shirt, but in the next moment, it could be this. That's what that dog is capable of. Can you use deadly force to prevent this from happening? Yeah, of course you can. So would the knife be appropriate? Would the gun be appropriate? Yeah, they would all be a proportional response. You're avoiding this. You're using that degree of harm, right? In the doctrine of necessity, the balancing test, you're using, you're firing a gun in a community, you're killing someone else's dog, normally wrongful acts, but you're doing it. You're committing that harm to avoid this harm. A much more robust argument. Now, I'm not saying you wouldn't get arrested or charged or convicted. I'm saying that's what the legal argument would be. And it's much more robust than if you had shot and killed a chihuahua biting at your pants cuff, right? So that's the defense of dog scenario. But we have another scenario, and that is, could the gentleman on the sidewalk use force against the owner of the dog? And the answer is, well, yeah, of course, there's a legal argument to be made. Why? Because the owner of the dog is in control of the dog. And so to the extent that the dog is attacking the man on the sidewalk, the owner of the dog is using that dog as a weapon. Just as if the owner of the dog was using a club or a knife or a gun. And as we've just seen, it's a weapon readily capable of causing death or serious bodily injury. So the owner of the dog is attacking the man on the sidewalk with deadly force. Now, assuming the other elements of self-defense are met, of course, the element of proportionality would hold that if you're being attacked with deadly force, you can use deadly force in self-defense. And if we presume that if the owner of the dog, the holder of the leash, if he were neutralized, would the dog's attack stop? And if you believe that's a reasonable presumption, then the use of deadly force against the owner of the dog would be reasonable under the 5 elements of self-defense, a reasonable act of self-defense that would fall within the justification of self-defense. What happens then? I mean, these dynamics, the law of self-defense itself is not super complicated, 5 elements, but the real world is super complicated. Say you shoot the owner and you neutralize him. Does the dog stop the attack? Did that work? I mean, maybe. We don't know. Might the dog get even angrier? Would the dog know that you shot the owner? I mean, would a dog recognize such a thing? It's not like you're, being closing proximity and raining blows upon the owner, which a dog would recognize. But a gun, I don't know. I don't claim any particular expertise in that. But would you have a legal argument, a legal justification to make against the charge of having shot the dog owner? Yeah, he was using his dog as a weapon to inflict a deadly force attack upon me. That would be the argument there. And there you'd be arguing the legal defense, not of necessity, but of self-defense. Innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. You were the innocent victim of an imminent, unlawful, deadly force attack if you're in a duty to retreat state, that you didn't have a safe opportunity to retreat, and your observations, your decisions, your actions were both subjectively believed to be necessary, and a hypothetical, reasonable, and prudent person in your position would have shared that subjective belief that it was reasonable to use force. That would be your legal defense. If you only use force against the dog, then it's this doctrine of necessity, doctrine of lesser evils, doctrine of lesser harms, or doctrine of choice of evils, the balancing test. By the way, if you kill the dog, what's the owner likely to do? Probably not be very happy about that, right? So I would expect that if you do kill the dog, use deadly force on the dog, your next fight's with the owner. Something to think about. All right, let me see. Whoops. Okay. I'm going to start going through questions. First, from our Law of Self-Defense members, of course. Oh, good. I see a bunch of new members in there. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Welcome aboard, folks. So glad to have you. Oh, here's a good one. Chuck, Law of Self-Defense member Chuck, says he's had good luck with OC spray. Yeah, OC spray. Of course, I carry OC spray every day. I carry a gun every day for personal protection. I also carry OC spray. I have it right here. There's mine. I carry it primarily as a non-deadly means of self-defense against a human aggressor, but OC spray tends to be pretty effective against dogs. Again, nothing's magic. OC spray is not magic, but dogs have a lot of mucous membranes, lots of which are, of course, ultimately the burning target of attack for pepper spray, for OC spray. So yeah, probably my first go-to against a dog attack would be OC spray if that option presented itself. Let's see. Law Self-Defense member D asks, good afternoon, sir. Do you have any plans to release the college level courses? He means our law school level courses, I presume, on DVD. This is the American Law Courses. Let me pull that back up while I'm answering this question. These are our American law courses, our law school level courses that we started teaching last year. We taught criminal law. In the spring, we taught evidence and property. This summer, we're teaching constitutional law. At that URL there, AmericanLawCourses.com, you can learn about the entire curriculum. And what we do is every course is first taught live. So criminal law, evidence, property were taught live. This summer, constitutional law will be taught live, so there's direct interaction with the professor. But of course, we also save the videos of those courses, and they're 15-week courses, an hour and a half each, so it's a lot of content. Appropriately so. They're supposed to be the equivalent quality and content as a normal law school course. We are making them available on. I don't believe they'll be available as DVDs. I'm not sure. They'll definitely be available streamed. The trouble is they're so long that everyone would be a multiple DVD set, and it just becomes complicated just from a manufacturing, production, inventory perspective. But we'll definitely be offering them in a streamed format. So if you were to sign up for one of our bundles, for example, you could sign up for a number of courses at a very substantial discount from the single course price. You would get whatever the next live courses are coming up, and you would get access to the streamed versions of the courses we already did. That's how that works. Okay. And that's learn more at AmericanLawCourses.com. If anybody in the comments is a student, and I would expect some of you are, feel free to say nice things about it. We've only heard glowing praise from the students in those courses. Let's see. Law Self-Defense member Sam, he's currently a platinum member, would like to sign up for the 5-year plan that we're doing. So this is the 5-year. We just did it this weekend. This is normally being a platinum member is, what is it? $600 a year to be a platinum member. And so 5 years would be $3,000. And we launched an offer this weekend. It was really only for this weekend, but it runs for another 48 hours, where you can be a platinum member for 5 years, which is normally $3,000, plus you get $2,000 worth of educational content. So that's $5,000 of value for $1,500. Covers you for 5 years. It works out to 82 cents a day. And for 5 years, you're guaranteed my legal consult or involved in a use of force event. And basically, you get every course we've ever done. You get it in streamed format. You get it in DVD format. We ship you the DVDs for free, and you get a ticket to the next upcoming live full day class that we teach, and your spouse gets covered and gets a ticket to the live class. So it's an amazing bundle of content. If you're currently a platinum member, we're happy to transfer you over to this 5-year offer, but you have to do it within the next day or two. because then the offer goes away. But yeah, we would basically credit you whatever you haven't used of your current membership and just transition you over to the new offer. We're happy to do that. Let's see. Oh, another great question. Law self-defense member Oscar. How important to a claim of self-defense is our knowledge of the consequences of a dog attack? It's all important. All important. Because this is what would happen. The prosecution would argue that all that dog represented was a threat to your clothing. And you shot the dog's owner over that. Now, if that's believed, if the only threat of the dog is to your clothing, it's a non-deadly force threat. So even though the dog owner was using the dog as a weapon, it was only being used as a non-deadly force weapon. You can't shoot the owner for attacking you with non-deadly force. So to justify your use of non-deadly force against the owner, you'd have to be able to articulate that you had a reasonable belief that the dog represented a threat, not just to your clothing, but a threat of death or serious bodily injury to you. And the prosecutor might argue, well, that's not true. That's not true. Dogs nip and bite people all the time. It's not serious bodily injury. There was no evidence this dog represented any particular deadly force threat. So you'd want to be able to introduce to the jury evidence that pit bulls kill and maim and take limbs off of people. But before you could introduce that kind of evidence, you'd need to demonstrate to the court that you possessed that knowledge at the time you were making your use of force decisions, that you didn't learn of it later. So one way you can document that is, if you're a law self-defense member, you have access to every piece of content we do, including this, with the picture of Sean Sorrentino. If you see news reports of dog attacks and you see the horrific injuries, I would save those. I would document all of those in your, sorry, folks. You should have a file with everything, every bit of information or knowledge that you think might be helpful to you in court if you're defending against a use of force charge, and document it, have dates on it. You don't need a lot of evidence that you possess this knowledge at the time you acted in self-defense. It's basically a more than zero evidence standard. But if there's zero evidence, if something has zero evidence, it doesn't exist for legal purposes. So you need more than that. If you're a law self-defense member, you could simply point to this show and say, hey, I saw that guy's face, Sean's face, mauled by that dog. That's serious bodily injury. I was aware those were the risks of that dog's attack. Law self-defense member Tony asks, Andrew, are you still holding instructor courses? So we have a program, folks, our Law of Self-Defense Instructor Program. And for whatever reason, we don't push it very hard. But it's basically a course of instruction for self-defense instructors so they can learn self-defense law at a law school-like level. I designed it as to be like a semester-long law school class on self-defense law. If anybody taught, if any law school taught self-defense law at that kind of level, which unfortunately they don't. Let's see. URL for that. And we've had hundreds of instructors go through the course. And frankly, it's unless a self-defense instructor has gone through this kind of course, the access they have to high quality self-defense law instruction is very limited. Now, the instructors who go through our program are extremely knowledgeable on self-defense law. How do I know? Because they spend 15 weeks going through our instructor program course, and then they have to pass a very rigorous final exam at the end to get certification. And we have the final exam because before I send these people out in the world as representing themselves as having been taught self-defense law by Law of Self-Defense, I need to know they actually learned it. They didn't just, I don't know, let the videos of the course play in the background while they were doing something else. So all the instructors have to pass a very rigorous final exam. Now, I will say that the final exam is, nobody ever fails it because we won't let the student fail it. We're not interested in taking someone's money for the instructor program and have them fail. So occasionally someone will fail the final exam, and then I'll personally sit with them, well, virtually sit with them, and talk them through the questions they got wrong, cover that content again, make sure they understand it, and then they can retest and get their certification. But before they get the certification, they do have to have passed that final exam. So if you're interested in that, if you're a self-defense instructor and would look like a lawyer-like education in self-defense law, I would encourage you to take a look at that, the banner below here, lawofselfdefense.com/instructor. The look and feel of the webpage is, folks, I think I designed the webpage myself, so it looks kind of primitive. I apologize for that. We need to redo it. But the content in the course is the same content you see me deliver all the time. So if that's of interest, take a look at lawofselfdefense.com/instructor. Now, I don't teach that course live. That course is, it's completely streamed online. So there is no schedule. You don't have to wait for a class to start. It starts whenever you want it to start. So you would sign up, get access to the course, start working your way through the weekly classes and doing the work assignments and all that kind of stuff. Now, if you do have any questions during the course, you have direct access to me as a student in the instructor program course to contact me with your questions and get them answered. So in that sense, there's a live component, but the lectures themselves are recorded. Okay, let's see. Wow, what happened? Oh, there's OC spray. Let's see. John, Law Self-Defense member John asks, and by the way, if you're not a Law Self-Defense member, if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble and you'd like to pose a question or a comment you want me to address, it has to be a $5 minimum. Super chat on YouTube, $5 minimum Rumble rant on Rumble. That's how that works. Or become a Law Self-Defense member and ask your questions for free in the member dashboard, as the members are doing right now in real time as I answer them. And you can become a Law Self-Defense member right now at lawselfdefense.com/join. Less than $10 a month, 30 cents a day, folks. Let's see. Okay, I think those are all the member questions. Let me take a look over at the super chat and see if there's anything I need to address there. Not on YouTube. What about Rumble? And it looks like Rumble is good too. By the way, folks, I've seen, because we've had a number of recent prosecutions and non-prosecutions, like the Alec Baldwin charges being dismissed, where people are saying, you know, that looks like it was simply a political decision, not a legal decision. Folks, those political decisions to charge or not charge happen all the time, and they're outside our control. That doesn't mean the law doesn't matter. If you get the law right, if you do everything perfectly right, might you still be subject to a politically motivated prosecution? And the answer is yes. You know, the criminal justice system is not some machine handed down by aliens. It's run by people, and people are emotional and political and biased, and, you know, they're just people. But I can tell you this: if you don't get the law right, they don't need to get political. If you don't get the law right on self-defense, you are an easy conviction on the legal merits, period. So you have to do that first, regardless of anything else. Get the law right. And then you're in the strongest position to defend yourself against any prosecution, the strongest position you can possibly be in. All right, so I think that's about it, folks. Oh my gosh, I went an hour again. All right, remember, if you carry a gun, so you're hard to kill. That's why I carry a gun, so I'm hard to kill. So my family is hard to kill. Then you also owe it to your friends and family to make sure you know the law, so you're hard to convict as well. Until next time, I remain Attorney Andrew Branker for Law of Self-Defense. Stay safe.